In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, it is our second episode of the day, but this is the weekend watch list. Find out the games that Leif and I will be tuning into this weekend with the marquee matchup featuring Duke versus Arizona. So stay tuned to hear our thoughts on some of the prospects that we will be monitoring over the weekend. Stay tuned. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first, or in this case, your second listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, along with my co-host, Leif Thulin, the man that watches more college basketball than anyone else. I don't understand how Leif is going to get rest, not only this weekend, but this week coming up. You got the Thanksgiving holiday, but there are a lot of high caliber basketball games to watch. So, Leif, you're going to have to share with us how you're going to find time to eat and get some rest. And before we get into this episode, I want to let you know that it is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And if you are not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please subscribe, like, share, comment, click the bell so you can be notified every time we drop an episode, because we are your daily source for NBA draft content. Also wanted to mention, your favorite Locked On podcast covering the NBA now has a newsletter. Check it out at LockedOnDaily.com. The Locked On newsletter will be delivered right to your inbox for free at LockedOnDaily.com. All right, it is November 22nd, just a few days away from Thanksgiving. Do you have any travel plans?
No, I'm here. I'm watching basketball. I'll be watching the Jazz, working the games there, and then when I'm not working the games, I'll be eating and watching college hoops. I don't care about the football.
Yeah, I don't really care about the football, but it's one of those things where it's always on. The last couple of years, I've traveled to Nebraska to spend Thanksgiving with my parents. This year, I'll be here. I'm actually moving next week. So between trying to watch a bunch of basketball games, podcasts, move, I'm going to be exhausted. But I'll figure it out. I'm going to figure it out. All right. But tonight, there is a huge matchup. Duke versus Arizona. What is the first thing that comes to mind with this matchup as far as from a prospect perspective? Is there anything that you want to see?
I want to see how Cooper Flagg does against defenders on Arizona's team, namely KJ Lewis, who's very physically strong. He's not as long as Cooper Flagg, but that's the type of defender that caused him slight issues against Kentucky. You saw Otego away at the end of the game defend both as a help defender and as a primary defender. KJ Lewis, Carter Bryant, Trey Townsend, even maybe just because he's so much older, even though I don't see him as this amazing defender. I want to see how Cooper Flagg is able to navigate their physicality and the plethora of bodies that Arizona can throw his way. Because I said this in this offseason, I said this after they played Kentucky. My one critique about Cooper Flagg would be he's not a natural scorer. Yet he went for 26 and 12 in the game they lost, and he was excellent. He was spectacular. Yet there was two big plays at the end of the game he wasn't great in. But the reason those happen is because he's not a natural scorer and he tries to overwhelm you with his physical attributes. Yes, there's tons of skill in there, but I don't know if he can overwhelm some of these sizable wings that Arizona has. And does Duke create differently than they did against Kentucky, where it became, hey, it's ISO ball because we can't shoot it all. But maybe it's because the shooting were just off one pass possessions. I'm expecting a far more concerted effort of pick and roll, establish Khaman Maluach on pick and rolls. But Cooper Flagg and how he handles the wing depth and physicality from Arizona is what I'll be watching the most closely.
I literally have the same exact thoughts, but mine is with Kon Knueppel. I definitely want to see how Flagg fares against Arizona's athletes. I think he is going to be able to rise to the occasion and match them athletically. But Knueppel was the one that I have the concerns about. But I want to go back to Flagg here. And I get exactly what you're saying about him not being a natural scorer. it's kind of hard to put it in words because maybe it just doesn't look like a Carmelo Anthony or Kevin Durant or, in recent years, a Brandon Miller. He can put up the same number of points, just stylistically, it just doesn't look as good as even like an Ace Bailey or Dylan Harper or Tre Johnson, which has led to people saying that they think Ace Bailey is going to pass them up. And I like Ace Bailey. I think that it could be a situation where, depending on the team, a team may favor Ace Bailey. I think if there's a GM, I'll say it like this. I think if there's a GM that feels that way, the owner is going to overrule him because Cooper Flagg is going to generate so much buzz and attention off the court. But anyway, I do think that stylistically, he doesn't look natural and he is still going to be productive. But I was looking at the stats and there were some rumblings, and of course it's still early, but there were some rumblings that Knueppel was going to lead Duke in scoring this year, which could still possibly happen. But Flagg is leading Duke in every statistical category: points, rebounds, assists, block, steals. He is stuffing the stat sheet. And I want to see against Arizona, against Carter Bryant. Carter Bryant, I think, has a chance to make a name for himself. He's already on radars. There's some people that think he's a first-round pick. There's some like myself that don't have him in the top 30. But a good game against Duke could propel him in the first round status, at least for the next round of mock drafts and big boards that are coming out.
I have two thoughts, one about Cooper Flagg and one about the Arizona Wings. I think one of KJ Lewis or Carter Bryant propels themselves up enormously if they win this game. Like, it may not even be 10 points scored, but it's going to be, hey, they slowed down Cooper Flagg and athletically they looked the part against a very athletic and sizable Duke team. And I think it'll be KJ Lewis defensively, and if Carter Bryant hits a few threes and you see he's huge, he's an enormous wing for a true freshman. I think one of those two guys is going to propel them. So that's my prediction. But as for Cooper Flagg, the player he reminds me of in college basketball is Anthony Davis. Like, they're not one-to-one because I know Anthony Davis was a center on that Kentucky team. But I pulled up Anthony Davis's stats from his college career. 14.2 points per game. That's pretty good. 10.4 rebounds per game. And mind you, this is a slower pace too. 4.7 blocks. That's unbelievable, astronomical, not going to be touched forever. 65% from two, and he only shot a few threes, but he shot 15% from three. So the reason I say Anthony Davis, and I don't think they're the same player in terms of what you're projecting forward, but Anthony Davis has refined himself into becoming a very solid shooter from the free throw line throughout his career. I know he had struggles last night. But you look at what he is from the field. I wouldn't say Anthony Davis, even though at times in this season and throughout his career has been a top 10 scoring leader in the NBA, is a skilled scorer compared to some of his competitors. I think Flagg is impactful in that same way, defensively and just overall feel and tenacity for the game. When Anthony Davis is right, both at the NBA level and at Kentucky, he was able to change the game on both sides of the ball. Cooper Flagg does it. I know James compared him to Kawhi, and I kind of am on board. I like that. He reminds me of Scottie Pippen, and I know I wasn't alive to watch Scottie Pippen's heyday, but Scottie Pippen was able to watch the way he was able to play the game when he played without Michael Jordan and had the ball in his hands. He wasn't a natural scorer, but he was still a first-team All-Pro on numerous occasions by being impactful as someone who handles the ball and creates for others with intelligence and size, and then is still an all-world defender. So I think that, yes, Ace Bailey may have the appeal of being more of the Carmelo, the Brandon Ingram of recent years, or T-Mac if you want this highest ceiling absolute, but Cooper Flagg's the guy. Like, he's number one. I don't think anything that Ace Bailey does will top it, and I don't think Harper or Tre Johnson really have a chance either. Cooper Flagg just makes such a winning impact. And even in this game, he may have struggles against those physical athletes. I still have the faith that Cooper Flagg is going to make the right play and rise to the occasion. Like you said, like your concern was about Kon Knueppel, or maybe not concern, but something you were watching for. The reason I say Cooper Flagg is I just want to see how he overcomes the actual physical objects that are in his path, because there are such specimens athletically. And we haven't even mentioned a 7'2" center that can match Khaman Maluach and look eye to eye, which Duke is not going to see all year.
Yeah. So the Anthony Davis comparison is something that I want to touch on more in the second segment. I literally just had this conversation on Facebook because someone had mentioned that they don't think Flagg will go number one because, he's not a gifted scorer or a natural scorer, and that's what they would take number one. And my counter argument was, what did you think of Anthony Davis coming out? In my opinion, and it's like probably one of the first video breakdowns I ever did, was I talked about Anthony Davis, but I thought he was an elite hustle player. But over time, he developed into a post threat, a guy that can face up, showed real little flashes at Kentucky, but over time he developed into a guy that I feel like if he was healthy and had a consistent alpha mindset, could be a 27 point per game scorer. But I think Anthony Davis, you can't go wrong by taking him number one in the draft. But I think Anthony Davis is a 1A. And I think best case scenario, Cooper Flagg is going to be a 1A. If you wonder if Anthony Davis is a franchise player, and then you look at the track record in New Orleans, I think they won one playoff series. That was against my Blazers. Would you say Anthony Davis is not a franchise player because he wasn't the most successful with New Orleans? I mean, there's so much can go into that. So we'll talk about that a little more when we return. Stay tuned for the second segment where we're going to dig a little deeper into Anthony Davis. We're also going to talk about Maluach, who has a big matchup again. But before we get into the second segment, I wanted to talk to you about Robinhood. Robinhood has Robinhood Gold. And with Robinhood Gold, you do not need a silver spoon to eat up financial favors or eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and the perks that are usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25 APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of the high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhoodgold.com. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. The rates may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. All right, second segment. So let's talk about the matchup in the middle. I just want to hear your thoughts on the two bigs for Duke and Arizona.
I mean, here's the thing. Arizona's got a lot of bigs, and Duke, when Khaman Maluach left the game, was significantly worse. So I think the biggest storyline will be keeping him out of foul trouble. Mm-hmm. I think that's the biggest storyline because Tobe Awaka is averaging 12 rebounds a game for Arizona, and he's not even their center. He's their power forward, which I actually think clogs the floor, makes it kind of clunky offensively for Arizona. But Mo Krivas is a skillful scorer. He's not quite the raw athlete that Maluach is, so he's not quite the defender. I'm high on Kam Maluach. I have him top 10. I think he's got skill set offensively, and I think defensively, when he's on the floor, Duke could be the best defense in America, and that includes Houston, that includes Auburn, that includes Iowa State, and they lock in, and Khaman Maluach and Cooper Flagg are both patrolling the paint. Good luck scoring. So I think the matchup will be how well Cooper Flagg and Khaman Maluach rebound against the more physically strong and experienced 5 or 6 guys on Arizona, of which we've named already, both on the wings and on the interior, more so than it is like a skill set thing or hey, like I wonder if this guy does this. I think it'll be staying out of foul trouble and how well they rebound.
Do you think Krivas is a first-round pick? I see some people ranking him as a first-rounder. I feel like Gavoni and ESPN really loves him, and they've been pumping him up for, 2 years now? I don't know if I can get there.
I'm not quite there either. I think he's more skilled than Oumar Ballo, but there's a reason Oumar Ballo was playing in front of him, and I think he was more physically ready last year. Krivas has taken a step forward, but still he's playing next to the more bruiser type in Awaka. So I'm with you. I think he's more of a project, and you're hoping he can develop into something. But right now he's averaging 8 points and 6 rebounds on 50% shooting as a 7'2" guy against inferior competition. So I'm not sold on a first round pick. I do think he kind of holds the keys for how good Arizona can be, though.
I think he's dealing with an injury, but he's only playing 13 minutes per game,
Yeah.
which was, pretty much the same, give or take a minute than what he played last year. But I've seen some people mock him as a first rounder. I don't see it. I guess I see the skill level. And I think there's a lot of European bigs that are very, very skilled, right? But I haven't seen like the dominant performances. And sometimes you don't need to dominate when you're 7'2". When you're 7'2", you have to prove that you can't play. When you're 6'2", you have to prove that you can play.
Yep.
So he doesn't have to put up big numbers, but I just haven't seen anything as far as like performances that can put him as a top 30 pick, especially in this draft.
Is he much better than like Tomislav Ivicic, not the guy at Illinois? Like he's 7'1" and he seems more skilled. I don't know if he's quite as swift or as nimble as Krivas, but I feel like for the amount of stuff I see about Krivas, that there should be the same narrative about a 7'1" guy playing and scoring 17 and 9 at Illinois.
Yeah, Ivicic is putting up, the accounting stats that can kind of warrant it. All right, Knueppel. I know I touched on it a little bit. What do you want to see from him?
I mean, the thing about Kon is he's a really good shooter, so I don't care that he shot poorly against Kentucky. Like, you can tell he can really shoot. You can tell he's got more to his game than just shooting based on the way he made those 2 left-hand layups against Kentucky. But I want to see him play under control and not be sped up. He was visibly sped up by Kentucky's attention to detail and focusing on him, making him drive. I want to see him make plays that aren't, hey, they're running me off the line. Cooper and I have to create everything. I want to see him blend in at times, which is not something you typically want to say about a prospect, because I think he's at his best when he's running off screens and attacks closeouts, and he's got a strong frame, and he's a deceptive athlete, all the things you hear stereotypically. Like, all those things are true about him, but what I want to see is him make quick decisions. I felt like he took too long to get off the ball against Kentucky. I thought he thought about making shots because that's his job description rather than just shooting them. So I want to see him play decisively.
Yep. All right, let's switch over to Tennessee and Baylor. In the last episode, we talked about VJ Edgecombe. So my question for you is, will the struggles continue against another high caliber opponent?
And a defense, too. That's a fearsome defense. I think they will continue to struggle there. I can't make up my mind who's going to win that game, because Tennessee blew out Virginia. Baylor probably shouldn't have won against St. John. So you would say Tennessee, and they're the higher seed. But Baylor's got the weapons to score, and Tennessee's not a team that's going to blow you out. But the reason I bring that up is I think VJ Edgecombe can make an impact on this game just by being an athlete, by staying in front of some of the physically talented guards on Tennessee, by rebounding the ball and pushing in transition, because this game is going to be physical and ugly at times. I think his athleticism and his motor can be on full display, and should he hit shots, it looks really, really good against the Tennessee side that is extremely stout defensively.
What happens if he struggles again? What will be the chatter?
I don't think there should be much chatter for struggling against Tennessee. Like, that's the team that most people struggle against, but I do think there's a chatter that needs to happen about his shot, because like I said in the previous episode, I don't believe his shot looks good. Like, both in terms of the aesthetics of the release, but also when he shoots it, it's rarely close. And I'm not saying that from like it's not hitting rim. Like, I'm seeing it's hitting the rim, but while I'm watching on a TV, it's not even in person, I can see it's offline or it's too flat, and it's not soft enough to go in. So I would like to see him have a nice shooting day and kind of knock away those concerns, but I think that's going to be a larger issue throughout the season because of the form is not overly pretty.
Do you think he changed it? It just looks funkier to me.
I
Or it just
don't
looks
know.
like it has too much to it. Like, it's just...
I never have thought he was a good shooter. Never once. Yeah. Like, I watched him play Montverde when he was playing in high school, and I understand, like, Montverde has all these players. Derek Queen, Cooper Flagg, Asa New, all these guys. But typically when you're a top 5 player in a high school class, you see it. I didn't think he was a top 3 player on the floor. And I didn't even think it was close. I wouldn't even say he was top 5 on that floor in that game. And so I've always kind of thought, like, look, if he's neutralized athletically, then you neutralize the prospect. So that's why I'm pretty low on him. And I don't mean to bury him, but I'd be pretty shocked if he has a good game. I hope he does for his sake, though.
All right, Syracuse and Texas Tech. My question for you is, can JT Toppin keep his hot streak? I mean, he's shooting 70% from the floor, averaging a double-double. Will the streak continue against Syracuse?
That'll be a weird matchup because he might be guarding Eddie Lampkin, who you couldn't have two more diametrically opposed centers. Like one is a pogo stick and the other one is a ground and pound bully who's going to get you up in the air and draw fouls. So if Toppin stays out of foul trouble, I think he could have a very productive offensive day. Defensively, I think he's going to have his work cut out for him against Eddie Lampkin.
It's like a 1985 center versus a 2025 center. Like, I think it's going to be a very interesting matchup. Lampkin is the type of player that can get him in a lot of trouble just because he's so much stronger and physical. But at the same time, I mean, Toppin has just been crazy this year. So I definitely want to see if he can continue to dominate, because right now he is rising up my board. I thought he was in the 25 to 30 range. It's very early. I keep reiterating that it's early, but based off of his production, it is definitely hard to take him out of the first round, or maybe even the lottery discussion. If he's not the hottest player in the country, then the hottest player in the country is Ryan Kalkbrenner as Creighton faces Nebraska, interstate rivalry game. I'm from Omaha. I remember when Lincoln and Omaha were like an hour apart, and now with the way the cities are expanding, it's like 35 minutes apart, depending on where you're at. It is a rivalry that, you know, I mean, Creighton's a basketball school. Nebraska's, well, they were a football school. Now when I was growing up, now we're struggling. But I want to see if Kalkbrenner can continue his hot streak. I don't even know if his hot streak is like the way to describe it. The man is shooting 89% from the floor. He had a game where he was 20 of 22, a game where he was, 6 for 6. Do you think he can continue shooting 89% from the floor? Do you think he may miss 3 shots this game? I think he's only missed like 4 all year.
I don't think he'll shoot 90% all year, but I really hope he does, because before the season, I placed one National Player of the Year future, and it was on Ryan Kalkbrenner. So I was thrilled to see him score 49 in the opener.
But 49 on 20 of 22 shooting. And that wasn't even his most efficient game, because he had a perfect game like a week later.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. And I think and this is not a recency bias take. I've said this for 3 straight years. I think he's the most underrated player in the country. If you put Ryan Kalkbrenner on Kansas, I think they're a better team than if they have Hunter Dickinson.
Well, I think because one is the 3-time. Is it 3 times?
Yeah, 3 times in a row. And so, but that's the thing, is like Dickinson draws all this attention. He's really good offensively, obviously, but like Kalkbrenner, you're seeing all this efficiency. It's not like he's a slouch there either. You look at Janai Broom, and he's the guy who's putting up the most counting stats between points, rebounds, assists, all this stuff for a really good Auburn team. I think Kalkbrenner's better than him. So I would take Kalkbrenner as my top pick of building a team in college basketball. Now for the NBA, I thought 2 years ago when I talked to him at the NBA Combine, when we were there, I didn't think he was going to leave. I thought he'd come back to Baylor, come back to Creighton, play with Baylor Shireman, play with Nembhard and Alexander. Turns out Nembhard went to Gonzaga, and Kaluma went to Kansas State, now Texas. But he's the reason that Creighton's been pertinent and relevant for the last couple of years. Like, they've had good players next to him. I love Baylor Shireman more than anyone in this draft cycle. Trey Alexander is really good, but their best player, Ryan Kalkbrenner. Kalkbrenner can play in the NBA. He's going to block shots. And yes, he's not a superb athlete, but he's skilled. He shoots free throws at a pretty high clip. So he can probably extend his range if you really want a center shooting threes, but he's going to block shots. He's going to roll to the rim, and he's going to be intelligent. I think he's an NBA player, and this is the 3rd straight year I've said so.
Yeah, I think you might be an unofficial Nebraskan, because you loved Shireman, you loved Kalkbrenner. And if you remember, at that combine, I think one of the reasons why he came back to school, if you remember, it's like Creighton's whole staff was sitting behind us. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was an interesting situation, because on one hand, you want him to do well, but on the other hand, you want to recruit him to come back. So I thought that was something interesting that goes on behind the scenes at the NBA Combine that you would never know unless you are there. All right, when we return, we're going to talk about Texas in St. Joe's. I think that's going to be a fun matchup. We're going to talk about if Tre Johnson can bounce back, and then we'll see which one of St. Joe's NBA prospects has the best game, and then we'll wrap up with another performance that's actually coming on Saturday, Marquette versus Georgia. But let's talk about FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the remaining NFL season with FanDuel, which happens to be America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can bet $5. You can get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it is all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more. And it is on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. And never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, last segment, Texas versus St. Joe's. Can Tre Johnson bounce back? Ran into his first little bit of college basketball adversity against Syracuse. Really struggled. I think in the last episode I said he was 4 for 15, but it was like 4 for 18. But he made 6 free throws, sealed the game. Are you expecting a bounce back game from Tre?
Yeah, I am. I think he'll be better. I think Syracuse had a good recipe for disruption against him. Like, yes, he missed shots, but I think they had good defenders for it. I don't think St. Joe's necessarily lacks good defenders for Tre Johnson. I think Tre Johnson's a really good player. I think he's going to be an All-American. I'll just say it right now. I think he's going to be an All-American. I'm going to guess second team. I think it'll be hard to infiltrate first team, particularly at the position he plays. But I just think it's going to be hard for him to have back-to-back bad games. But I'll say this. I think St. Joe's is going to win that game as an 8-point underdog.
Okay.
Tre Johnson, though, back to the point of the NBA draft, I just wanted to get that prediction off. I think Tre Johnson's going to have to work against smaller guards, and it'll be a test in his shot selection, and I think it'll be a test in how he plays as a decision maker, because he's going to be doubled. They're going to throw the kitchen sink at him, and it's going to be a test of how much he trusts his teammates and how efficiently he can score, seeing through a host of different defenses that are geared towards stopping him, because there's more and more film on him now, and it's going to be harder for him, but he's still, in my opinion, going to thrive.
Yeah, he is a professional scorer. All right, Marquette, Georgia, Kam Jones. Did you see the jump from him that he's made this year? I mean, we knew he could score. He was Marquette's leading scorer, I think, the last 2 years.
Yep.
I thought he greatly benefited from playing with 2+ playmakers in Tyler Kolek and also Iguodaro. I thought Iguodaro was the best, if not the best, one of the top 2 or 3 big man playmakers in last year's draft. And I thought Tyler Kolek was the best playmaker. Kam Jones loses both of them, and all of a sudden it's like he's turned into a high-level playmaker. He had a triple-double recently. He has 2 games of 8 assists or more. He's still shooting lights out. I think he's really, really helped himself. I also think that he is the type of player that will go high and higher in this draft than a lot of people anticipate, because I believe that outside of the lottery, these teams that are playoff teams are going to look for someone that can come in. We've seen the success of Jalen Wells, Dalton Connect, and I think Kam Jones is going to be one of those guys that's going to be able to come in and play right away, especially if he keeps showing the playmaking that he's shown so far this season. What are your thoughts on Kam Jones?
Yeah, I actually was very high on him last year. I thought he might come out because of Kolek and Iguodaro leaving. And as a college basketball fan, I was thrilled he returned. But I actually wouldn't have minded taking him in the first round last year, because in a class that we talked about lacking shooting and scoring capacity, he's a guy who clearly had it. Now, to answer your first question about taking the leap, I believe that Kam Jones was going to take the leap because in the Big East tournament, Tyler Kolek was held out, and Marquette still made the championship game because Kam Jones played point guard and was excellent in that game. Yes, he had Iguodaro, but Kolek, I think they were a symbiotic relationship, no doubt about it. I think Iguodaro helped Kolek, but Kolek helped Iguodaro. And then there was no Kolek. And then all of a sudden, Marquette was still efficient, and they still found ways to score, even if different ways. And it made me more and more optimistic about Kam Jones' ability to play both guard positions. Is he a superb athlete? No. But is he unbelievably crafty around the rim? He's the best, below the rim finisher in the country right now. And he's scoring 23 a game, 46% from three. Strangely, only shooting 68% from the free throw line. That'll get up to it's mid-70s at least throughout the year. And I think he's an 80% caliber shooter. So, and the funniest thing is you just mentioned Dalton Knecht, Jalen Wells. I sent a text to one of my best friends the other day, and I said, you're probably right about Jared McCain and Dalton Knecht. Like, people overestimate how simple basketball is at times. Underestimate how basketball can be really simple. You need to have people who can put the ball on the floor and put the ball in the hoop. There's other pieces, but those are really vital. And I think myself and many other draft pundits overestimate that type of thing and underestimate the value of just scoring. And I texted him, Jared McCain's success means that Kam Jones is going to be a first rounder. That was as simple as the text. I said, Dalton Knecht, Jared McCain being able to score as well as they are as NBA pros means that Jared McCain has carved out the role for Kam Jones to be a first round pick. And then I said, first team All-American Kam Jones. And this was a week and a half ago. So
that was before the triple-double.
Yeah, that was before the triple-double. So I think that you're going to see Kam Jones be a first-rounder. I think you're going to see him be a first-team All-American. And I think you're going to see him score 10-plus points a game in the NBA for a while.
Yeah, I can just see him being the type of player that ends up going to – I think I have him slotted to Orlando in my mock draft that I just released. And I know there's not a clear-cut path to playing time, but I could see him being the type of player that goes mid to late first round, that leapfrogs a lottery pick that the team drafted a couple years ago that is just not ready. And they may even be the same age. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast. Once again, thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Now, please check out the Locked On newsletter, because your favorite NBA team from your favorite Locked On podcast now has the newsletter. So check it out at lockedondaily.com. I hope everyone has a great weekend. There's a lot of basketball. Stay tuned to Locked On NBA Big Board crew, because we will be covering all of the top prospects, and we are out of here.